From war documentaries to drunken nights out in Newcastle. I've done that quite a few times. American sitcoms and stand-up dramas and dancing mums. Between all of these controllers, I feel like we've got just about everything covered, so it should be a really interesting session. Now, this one's going to work slightly differently from how it has done in previous years, because as you can see, I've not got the four of them up on stage with me. We're going to do it, each one is going to be done separately. So we've got about 15 minutes with each one of the controllers. We're not going to be doing questions from the audience, because that will take up a little bit too much time. That's where your app comes into play. I hope you've all downloaded your app. No? Yes? You have? Yes, fabulous. The gentleman over there who's answering back. I love that. Thank you very much. So what I'd like you to do is for each session, as you think of questions, just put them into the app according to who it is that you want to direct the question to. So, of course, if you wanted it for Hamish, you click on Hamish's face, which is on the app, and you input your question there, and I can direct it to each and every one of them. So make sure you do download it. I have about 10 minutes with each one of our controllers, and then I will go to the app questions, and I'll direct those questions to them. So we're going to start off first with Hamish, because he's here on stage. He is the Executive Vice President and Head of International Content for Nat Geo. Quite a mouthful. A global broadcaster which reaches 440 million homes in 171 countries and 48 languages. Now, he's here to talk about how he commissions international content from the UK, but also outline his network's ambitious strategy for the year ahead. But before all of that, let's take a look at exactly what it is they do. You live to tell great stories, Hamish. That's right. Very nice. So tell us, how does your job differ from a traditional UK controller?
Well, I think if you're pitching to somebody on this panel, the big question that you have to ask them is, how big's your footprint? Because in the big international broadcasters, the US-based international broadcasters, do their international broadcasting in very, very different ways. And I think what makes Nat Geo unique is the fact that all of their international commissioning is centered in London. So effectively, I'm commissioning editor for everywhere outside the US. So it's a pretty massive area to cover. And the way that it differs is we are ultimately looking for programs that will work right across all these regions, that will work in Latin America, that will work in Europe, that will work in Asia. And a real hit for me is a hit that is successful in every one of those regions.
And that's the main difference, isn't it? When you're looking for programs, you're not just looking for ones that will work here. They need to work across all of those territories. Yeah. So how does that differ from regular sort of fact-ents within the UK? How does that differ in terms of what it is you're looking for?
Well, I think that one of the things, it's probably easiest to answer that question by saying a little bit about what we're not looking for. And I think that there are one or two misconceptions that people have, again, when bringing in ideas to Nat Geo. The kind of host, the kind of presenter who would work on BBC 2 or Channel 4 frequently won't work for us. Remember, these programs are translated into 44 languages. So if you have somebody who's doing a walking, talking piece to camera, it's quite unlikely that that's going to be something that will work very well once the program is around the world. Whereas if you've got incredibly integrated characters, if you've got hosts who are really showing, not telling, presenters who are absolutely at the heart of doing something, it's much more likely to work around the world. And I think the other aspect of that is where you have stories about characters, you might call it docusoap, that can work exceedingly well because it's very clear why these people are there and what they're doing, because they're at the heart of the story, rather than being a mediator.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that is a show that we were talking about earlier that I watched over the weekend, which is Brain Games, which isn't a show that I've seen anywhere else within the UK, but it does what it says on the tin incredibly well, doesn't it? And that's someone that's immersing themselves within the subject. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has watched Brain Games. You explain what the show is.
Yeah, well, we've got a number of programs that you might put them in under the kind of marketing banner of entertain your brain. That's certainly what our marketing people did. And they're pop science shows that are done by using a whole raft of techniques of kind of optical illusion, trickery and deception. There's tons of gameplay where you're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And there are lots of moments where your jaw drops. You're thinking, wow, how on earth did that work? And what's been so good about these programs is with Brain Games from the US leading the way and a number of other programs that we've commissioned out of the UK building up a whole large number of episodes, they've been not only really successful for us worldwide, but also they've, I think, made us really distinct from what the competition is doing. And that thing about the brand and the genre, it's intelligent and also fun, so it feels dead right on National Geographic.
You have a core audience that would instinctively gravitate towards Nat Geo. How do you keep hold of them when you're doing shows like Brain Games, for example? How do you make sure that those core audience members stick with you?
Well, when people say that, they usually mean a kind of older audience who likes a more traditional kind of programming. And that's another thing which I think is misunderstood about National Geographic. People think it's an older skewing channel, but because the audiences are so young in the countries where we're broadcasting, in fact, most of the people watching our programs are young. In India, we found that the demographic, they divide the demographic into the 10 to 15 to 25-year-olds, the 25 to 35-year-olds, 35 to 45-year-olds. The biggest category there is the 15 to 25-year-olds. That's how young it is. And we were saying, how come the audience is so young? And they were saying, well, the Indian population just is that young. So it's one of the reasons why some of the slightly more edgy, slightly more comical programs, I mean, you mentioned the Entertain Your Brain programs. We have Science of Stupid from IWC, which is really popular with younger audiences, which uses these internet fail clips and then explains the science behind them. And these programs can not only deliver great science content, but they can do it in a fun way that really hits the mark with a younger audience.
But do you think that enough UK producers really understand what your channel does? When they're pitching ideas to you, do you feel like they've actually sat and actually watched the channel?
Well, it's very, very easy to tell which ones have and which ones haven't. And a surprising number of people will come in, and when you ask them a few rudimentary questions about what they've actually seen on Nat Geo, you find that they haven't watched it very much. I mean, I think the biggest shift, and in a way one of the things I'm most proud of and has been driving the channel performance, is going from being a channel made up of single films and two-parters and three-parters into a channel which is all about returning series in multi-episode numbers and often quite docu-soapy series that have got characters in them.
I guess, you work not just obviously with UK producers, but producers all over the world. What's the main difference, say, if we use the American market, for instance, what's the difference in terms of what you're looking for? And do you think a UK producer understands the differences between, say, a US market and a UK market when it comes to fact ends?
Well, I mean, some of our most successful worldwide programs are from the US. So I think the US are good at making programs that do translate. The ones that don't tend to be the ones that are about very, very domestically oriented American subject matter. They sometimes don't translate so well. But I think that the way in which Americans kind of edit and cut shows, the pacing of them, the way they do their junctions, the way that they really build up the characters so that you can clearly identify with who's who. I think in many ways the US producers are ahead of the game. They're ahead of the Brit producers.
So we've got a lot to learn in that case.
In some cases, absolutely yes. And I think there are some UK producers who really get it, and there are some that don't. And we're always looking for the ones that do. So
what do you suggest they do? Obviously, with lots of producers here in the room. Do you suggest, I don't know, they just binge on US shows for a while so they get a better understanding of how it works?
Well, I mean, I think that some people think that National Geographic is just going to be, in some ways, sort of less sophisticated versions of programs on UK terrestrial channels. And I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. I think the programs have to deliver really tons of content. They have to often have great access. They have to be shot in a way that surpasses what you've seen before. They really do have to be quality programs, but then they also have to have this pace and accessibility that's sometimes missing from UK shows.
I mean, you're really selling National Geographic to me, I have to say. You really are doing that very well, Hamish. But I'm not a typical viewer. And I came
across... You like Brain Games, though.
Yes, but that only happened because I was looking into Nat Geo and looking at different shows that you do. And my brother watches National Geographic. Brain Games would be an amazing show for me to sit and watch, but I knew nothing about it. So how do you sell your brand from the rooftops? How do you get everyone to understand what you do and actually sit down and watch it?
Well, it is honestly one of the curiously annoying things about working for one of these pay TV factual channels in the UK, which is that because there's so much other factual on air in the UK, a lot of people haven't seen your programs. And, you know, we can have a series like Cosmos, which is like a huge marketing priority. In every other country, people would be aware of it. In Britain, not so much, because we are quite far down the dial. And you tend to find that the countries that have got the kind of less developed terrestrial factual TV channels are the ones where Nat Geo tends to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, you were in Taiwan not that long ago, and you were saying that a lot of your presenters were treated like rock stars when they went there, because the channel is huge there, which is brilliant.
It's nice to see a Science Channel presenter being pursued by a crowd so that he has to sprint to his car before he gets torn apart by autograph hunters. I wish that happened more often.
Oh, brilliant.
I was the guy going, Elvis has left the building.
You're like, get my autograph, pursue me. So let's talk about a perceived obsession that the channel may have with World War II content. Do you feel that, well, you're not going to say that you feel like you do it too much, but do you feel that you're over-reliant on World War II content?
Well, I think if you look at the schedule as it is now, there's not really all that much World War II on there. You know, it's we have 1 or 2 World War II shows, and I think that the way of doing them, from my point of view, is trying to make them contemporary. What's the present day storyline that will unlock the history? I don't think we've got very little now of the traditional archive talking heads World War II, you know, the reason for that actually isn't that we don't like it. It's that actually the other programs work better, particularly outside of Europe. Yeah. There's not as much an appetite for watching World War II programs as there used to be.
Well, as we're talking about World War II, I'm going to refer to one of the questions on the app. This is regarding your Nazi War Diggers programme and the controversy surrounding it. Does it make you reassess the way that you do World War II coverage as a result of what happened with Nazi War Diggers?
Well, Nazi War Diggers was a program which involved excavation on the Eastern Front. Now, I used to be the commissioning editor of Time Team when I was at Channel 4, so I was very well aware of the fact that there's always, where you have archaeologists and metal detectorists in one place, there's always going to be controversy. Look, we made that show and ultimately decided that we weren't going to air it because of some sensitivities in some places. And actually, to be honest, that happens quite a lot. You know, we're always reviewing our content. We're always looking at how it's going to play out, both in terms of how it's going to be received by constituencies who are going to be influenced, but also how it's going to work, just how it's going to perform. So, you know, controversy, not so much, I would say.
Okay, you've got 1 minute left. I need you to tell these guys what it is that you're looking for and, you know, what sort of budgets we're looking at.
Well, our budgets are, I would say, comparable to terrestrial channel budgets in the UK. I would say that we're more, even though we still do commission singles and specials, particularly where they're anniversaries or where there's something that we can make a really big splash, primarily looking for long-run series. We're also looking for returning series. So if you get something away with us, if you're an indie, it's quite a good place to be. We've got lots of content coming through. I mean, tons of it. And we're commissioning like mad at the moment and still looking for more.
Brilliant. Commissioning like mad. Love that. Hamish, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our list of controllers, we have the lovely Lourdes Diaz. She's a former NBC drama executive. She joined Viacom in 2013. She is LA-based, but she does split her time between the UK and the US, and she focuses on developing and commissioning scripted content for comedy channels and websites outside of America, obviously including Comedy Central UK. Whilst we have a messy and probably comedic chair move here, because you now have to jump up on stage.
No, I think I probably should pay a couple people.
No, you can pay them after, don't worry about that. So, you're in this fantastic job at Viacom, and you promised to do a big shake-up of the way that Comedy Central works in the UK, and that involved you investing in scripted sitcoms, which we saw some of them there. Mm-hmm. I mean, how is that all going?
It's going really well. I mean, I've been in the job now for about a year, and it started from zero. We had some success with Threesome and with Big Bad World. And it's just really starting to look at the pipeline and think about Comedy Central is the only comedy global brand right now, and it's Viacom's growth brand at the moment. I mean, we have 27 27 networks outside the US in 70 different countries, and it's just it's a lot of comedy.
It's a lot of comedy. It is a lot of comedy. I mean, how much would you say that you have spent thus far in terms of investing within UK comedy scene?
Well, I think a lot of people here have come through our offices, and we're looking for material that has 100 episodes in it. I mean, that's when I'm looking for, as to work both in the UK and outside the UK. So we're investing in scripts, we're investing in formats, we're investing in proven formats that have worked elsewhere that we could try and reinvent here.
But you see, the thing is that UK comedy tends to work slightly differently from US comedy. I'd say The Office is a good example of that. The Office UK is quite different from the American Office. Do you understand that it can be quite difficult for a producer here to come up with content that you can do 100 episodes with, that works here, that works, I don't know, in South America, that works in North America, that works in Australia? It's difficult to come up with something that can go across the globe. Yeah,
I think the writers, I mean, I go back to the writers. I mean, I obviously come from the States, and where the writers are king. And the writers here, we've been very lucky to work with writers who've grown up watching sitcoms and who've grown up seeing American-style sitcoms. And while the UK format is comedy has gone more into a single cam, you have a really wonderful tradition and history, and very successful, even recent history, of the multicam. So what we've learned in we did a study with like 6,000, I think it's 16 to 34 in 32 countries.
You didn't interview me, and I'm in that bracket, clearly.
Clearly. And so what they found was that they really watch easy consuming comedy, and so that's what travels.
And so how easy do you find it to work with UK producers? You've obviously been working with some comedy people at the moment.
Yep.
And how much input have you had sorry, talking my ear. Do you prefer, have you found it an easy process? And have you been working with established people? Have you been working with new talent? With the new shows that you've been doing with the UK market, which side of the sphere
I think what we do is we marry them. So if it's a new writer, we'll marry them with an established producer so they can deliver. If it's we're very lucky to be working with Big Talk and with Clerkenwell and with Rough Cut and with Tiger Aspect and and many others who've come through, and some of that who I haven't mentioned, but we're working with on development.
So you quite like working with new talent in that case?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think new talent who's collaborative. I think that's the most important part, because what we're doing is kind of like the wild, wild west.
Some people may find it bizarre almost that you're sort of overseeing UK comedy, but you're not here full time. You're in the States a lot. So how do you manage to keep your finger on the pulse, per se?
Well, we have a team here, and I'm looking over UK comedy, but I'm also looking at international comedy. So international comedy has to work in the UK first. It's important for us, which is why we have UK writers and UK production companies. And then the international aspect of it is where we come in, where our expertise is, where we know our audience. So it is a collaborative process.
So with this collaborative process that you have,
yes.
Is there any particular UK talent that you're quite excited about at the moment, be that writers, performers, producers?
I love all my children equally.
Nice answer.
I love, but I'm very excited with the writers we're working with. And we have on Mummy's Boys, which is going into production in about 6 weeks. We have Patty Carr and Paul McKenna, and they're being shepherded and guided with Caroline Letty, who did The In-Betweeners. So we're really wanting to nurture that talent and to make sure that we have that.
What gets you excited?
Laughing. I like laughing.
As long as it makes you laugh, you like it.
If it makes me laugh, it's a visceral thing. I mean, there is no real formula.
Yeah.
You either laugh or you don't.
So what makes the shows on Comedy Central make you laugh in a different way to, say, shows that may well be on Dave or be on Channel 4, for example? What's the difference?
Well, the difference is, there's a lot of American acquisitions on all the UK broadcasters here, whether they be cable or terrestrials. So, I think those things that are traveling are working well. things that make me laugh, you know, it's a different thing. I like Parks and Rec. Does it travel as well? You know, it's not something I would buy for my large audience that I need to travel, because I need easy, consumable, you know, comedy. I don't need, as we discussed this morning, the ham sandwich kind of joke, where it's that subtlety and that slower pace where you're an hour later fixing a ham sandwich and you're like, oh, that was so funny. But, you know, we are looking for comedy that's going to make you laugh. That's going to, we're asking for 22 minutes. 22 minutes to
Sounds
just
bizarre
kind
that
of...
you have to say that. We're looking for shows that make us laugh, and that should be obvious when it's on the Comedy Channel.
It is.
But to date, Friends has aired 3,500 times.
Yes.
And it accounts for over 50% of the ratings. And we have a question here on the app from someone asking you, what's your favourite episode of Friends?
Well, anything with Ross and with Rachel. You know, I especially like the one in Las Vegas where they get drunk and they sleep together, and then they draw with Sharpies on their faces, and it's
I mean, you know, it's 3,500 times. It'd be great if it was a UK comedy that was repeated that many times. So if someone here has a wonderful idea for a comedy series that could become the Friends for you.
That's what we're looking for.
Who do they pitch to? Do they give you a call? Do they give your commissioners a call? Do they fly over to LA and have lunch with you?
I'm here. I'm here about a quarter of my time. I'll be here October through December, because we'll be in production on a couple of series. And, you know, we have a head of development, we have a head of acquisitions, we have Jill Offman, who's always available. And I'm always available by phone or by email if I'm not in the actual country. But it hasn't been difficult, and I think we've met with a lot of companies. And we've also met with smaller production companies who have this like idea, and we've helped them develop it, and then we will help partner them with someone who can deliver on that idea.
Because, for a smaller company, it's not that easy for them to come up with an idea that can go across 100 episodes.
Well,
that's a lot.
Think about it this way. If you think about character and premise, right? So when I look at something, is the character, do you want to live with that character for 100 episodes? Do you want that character in your life for 5 years? Do you want to be in that premise, if it's not a character? Do you want to be in that place for 5 years?
Yeah.
If it starts with a character, you look at something like The Big Bang Theory, which is, right next to Friends is the second most successful, and then Seinfeld, of course. You have dynamic series and you have static series. Big Bang is a very good example of a dynamic series where you started out with Leonard and with Sheldon and with Penny, who was our way into this nerd world, and that started to grow organically. So they started adding these other characters to it. You weren't just thrust into 6 friends. You've now grown into a significant cast. But that's an organic storytelling machine that can deliver hundreds of episodes. So that's what we're looking for.
And is there anything that you feel is missing on your channel at the moment?
Well, at the moment, we want our more original commissions, which we are in the process of fixing. So we have a healthy mix of stand-up, of acquisitions of both UK productions and US productions, and now we're going to be going into this broader, more modern slapstick.
Now let's talk about Viacom almost purchase of Channel 5. Is that going to affect the sorts of things that you're looking for? Will your brief be bigger?
I hope so. We're really excited to work with them. We don't know. It's going through its regulatory process. Being from the US, it's a new and foreign process to me. But the guys there are awesome. So if there's a way that we can all work together, that'll be great. But at the moment, we have to wait until we have approval.
Okay, right, you've got a minute. So similar to what I did with Hamish, I'd like you to tell them what it is that you want. What is it that you want them to do now? Having been inspired by you in this room right now, what is it that you want them to do for you?
We want to find a comedy. We want multiple comedies. We're looking for unscripted comedy. Unscripted comedy is actually harder than scripted comedy, if you can believe that. We want to find a non-scripted. We want to find a Geordie Shore that isn't a Geordie Shore, but that our version, Comedy Central's version of Geordie Shore, that puts comedy first. So it isn't about funny sex necessarily and funny drunks, but that really sets us apart. We want to make a mark in that. So if there's an alternative or non-scripted funny idea out there, we want to hear it. You know, we get a lot of Japanese game show ideas and see how that works. You know, we're looking for the next Big Bang Theory. We're looking for the next, I don't want to say Friends because we have Friends, but we're looking for that perennial comedy that will play, and you turn it on and it'll be a friend that you welcome and kind of like, I had a shitty day. Oops, can I say that?
It's all right, you can swear right else, it's cool.
Sorry. I had a terrible day, and you know, my wellies didn't work, and I missed my Oyster card didn't work, and all of that. We just want 22 minutes, and we want to make you laugh.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, hopefully, in a year's time when you come back, one of these guys would have provided you with that.
Please.
So, Lourdes, thank you so much for joining us. So make sure you click his face and put your questions in there. It will work. Yes, it will work in a second, my darling. But I need to properly introduce you. Steve Regan. He's the MTV commissioner of shows such as Geordie Shore, that Lourdes just mentioned, and The Valleys, and for which the Mirror said made Essex look like Shakespeare, and also described Geordie Shore as exceptional filthiness.
What I did or they did?
The Independent did, but I'm sure you have also at some point described it as such. But let's have a look at what MTV does. Oh, Steve, do you just have fun all day at work?
Yeah,
that looks like a lot of fun.
It's pretty good actually, yeah.
So, it's been a year of hit and misses for MTV. It's not all been
mainly hits,
wonderful.
actually.
Okay.
I'd say mainly hits, yeah.
All right, just mainly hits.
I can back it up.
All right, cool,
Yeah.
all right. But what is it that you're most proud of, would you say?
I love X on the Beach. I do love that programme. And I do love my Geordies as well, and I don't care if people think they're filthy, but I do love those two programmes. But I think X on the Beach in particular, I'm very fond of at the moment.
And that did really well because you cross-promoted, didn't you, with X on the Beach? So you had a couple of characters on X on the Beach that had featured in...
we didn't do that on purpose, actually. What happened was, when we were doing the casting, I think lots of our programmes, the cast are so good because the girls are so funny. And actually, the girls that we were getting to come through on X on the Beach, they're very good looking, but they probably weren't the funniest people in the world. So we put Vicky in because we just thought she was hysterical. And that is probably one of the greatest X stories ever because she genuinely hates Ricky. So it just worked editorially. And with the second series, which we have just finished casting now, we're debating whether we're putting someone who's famous in or not. We're not quite sure yet, actually.
Okay.
There's a couple of people we're thinking about.
Who?
Oh, I can't say that.
Oh, okay. If I gave you a magic wand, and you could have any ex-couple, who would you have?
Jordan and Peter.
Jordan and Peter. Oh, I'd watch that.
Jordan and what's his name? Who's the transvestite guy as well?
Alex. Oh, Alex.
Alex.
Yeah. Oh, if you can pull that off, that'd be amazing.
That's what I'd love, yeah.
Okay, well, hopefully that will happen in series 2. But how do you measure your success? Is it through, because on your screen, on the screen there, you were talking about Facebook likes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What's the biggest measure for you?
I mean, the thing that I have to concentrate on is 1634s. So our shows have to rate really highly on 1634s. Lots of people are losing them. We're not. You know, our two key shows, Geordie Shore and X on the Beach, Night of TX, not every single week, but often, will outrate BBC One, Channel 4, ITV for the 1634s. But I won't commission anything either that won't kind of translate social media. It's got to do massive impacts. When we commissioned X on the Beach, you just knew that title on Twitter worked.
Yeah, that's
you just knew that people were going to talk about it. And so we won't commission anything that won't do it across the board, actually.
Is that why you didn't end up commissioning a UK version of Catfish?
No, what happened with Catfish was Renegade did a really brilliant development. Catfish is the show, whenever I told anybody we were doing this development, they went, it'll never work out. And I went, yes, it will, yes, it will. They did a really brilliant development. We found some really good stories, some really good presenters. In the end, what happened was, in America, you believed that someone in Missouri would not meet somebody in New York. Here, you did not believe that somebody in Birmingham could not get on the train to Manchester.
True.
And when they hadn't, there was something a bit weird and dark about it. And so we just thought it didn't quite work. But Neve and Max and the production company who make the original Catfish have come to us and they've said we would like to look at it again, perhaps more of an international European bent. So, I mean, it's not definite, but we haven't quite given it up because that show is so important to us.
So we could potentially be seeing a UK version of Catfish, potentially, or something similar anyway.
Chucked that all over the desk. Yeah, definitely. It's really, really, really early. It's actually only been the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that. But let's talk about something that wasn't necessarily a hit, and that was Beauty School Cop-Outs. That just didn't perform for the channel. Why do you think that happened? I
mean, I think it was, to the viewers, it looks like a lazy commissioning decision, but nobody ever goes into the office and goes, I'm going to make a lazy commissioning decision today. But it did look like, and I kind of get it, and I mean, it really didn't rate. The production company did a brilliant job. I just think, you know, I got so much grief for commissioning the Valleys because it looked like a copy of Geordie Shore with different accents.
So do you think that's why the Valleys didn't work either?
The Valleys did rate.
So it did rate, but it's not coming back though, is it?
No, it's not. The reason why it's not come back is because we've got so much 10 o'clock content, and X on the Beach ratings were so fantastic.
So you basically can't fit it in?
Yeah. At 10, yeah.
Okay, so you're not looking for anything else to fit into that 10 o'clock slot in that case?
No, not at the moment. I mean, I've got 3 developments at the moment that we're about to choose our next commission from. And actually, I think they could all play at 9 o'clock, and I'd quite like that. I think X could play at 9 o'clock. I think X was also a little less divisive than our other content. It felt a bit more mainstream. You know, Geordie's become mainstream because it's 9 series in, but it took a while to get there. Sorry, I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, you're rambling.
9 o'clock.
It's fine.
Yes, 9 o'clock.
Now, of course, all these shows we've been talking about are based on reality.
X is a format.
X is a format, yeah. But a format's now your aim in that case. Why?
Because the reason why X came about was about a year and a half ago when Craig worked with me, we were talking about shows that something about Miriam, Space Cadets, Bar Wars, Playing It Straight. You know, there's kind of like fun formats. And also as well, about a year ago, TV was really bloody dry. It was all obdoc and it was all kind of factual. And we just thought, we're going to go for that. And so what I don't want is like just lookalikes of X. And the 3 developments I've got at the moment, I think they are brilliant.
Okay.
They are brilliant. And I'd like to make all of them. I won't be able to. And you know, they've got great titles. One in particular, I think, is just the best title.
Can you just give us a hint of what it's about? Just like a little bit of a hint. That would be brilliant. Go on, tease us. Come on, Steve.
It would be the gayest show on TV ever. Ever.
Okay.
Ever.
I like that little teaser.
Russia's going to love it.
I love that little tease. So, in terms of what these guys can bring to you, what is it that you want and what sort of slots? We've already talked about the 9 o'clock and the 10 o'clock slot.
I've got my immediate slot. That's kind of gone. We're going to make a decision next couple of weeks, actually. There's a slot I've got coming up in July, and then there'll be another one after that. So what we're looking for at the moment is, I want similar things to X on the Beach. You know, I heard that title, and you just thought, could there be more of an MTV show? It just felt perfect. And then we slightly sort of worked out what the show was as we were going along, because we loved the title so much. So I want a title, but also as well, it needs to be able to do 4, 5, 6 series. Geordie's doing 9. I think X on the Beach, if it continues to be successful, could run forever. We like attention-seeking titles. Don't mind being a little bit risky. Yeah. I like the fact that, you know, X on the Beach is that kind of thing on the EPG, which kind of nags at you to watch it. We like things like that, yeah.
But obviously MTV in America is going more down the sort of factual or doc-reality route, so things like Teen Mums and A Virgin Territory. Is that not something that you want to do here?
But it's so weird. When you do entertainment, you're always asked, are you going to do factual? It's like, when are you going to get a proper job? Actually, you know, we are an entertainment channel, and America does really pure factual. We've got 2 factual developments at the moment, actually. One of them came from, I loved Life on Death Row on BBC 3. I think it's my favourite programme, actually, of the year. And there was a storyline in that I thought was amazing. So we've got a production company who are looking at that for us. But the factual idea is we can't just have stuff that does okay. It has to rate really well. Yeah. And something like X has made it even harder because X has done so well for us, and it's also the first show to go to the US. And it's done well internationally. So now everything's got to work. So
go on.
So even the factual's got to sound...
Because what I was going to ask is that, would you ask from producers that they produce stuff that won't just work on a UK market?
No, I don't want anybody thinking all this work in Kazakhstan, because it ends up being like the worst idea possible. This idea that I've got, which I said will be the gayest show ever, I mean, we have got territories, and my boss Kerry is the one that oversees them all. There are certain territories which are more conservative than us. and places like Sweden. So, you know, Russia, Asia, you know, I'm not worrying about that. This idea is absolutely brilliant.
Is it called the gayest show ever made?
No, it's got a really offensive title.
Oh.
Could
you? Oh, I really want to know it now. Can you tell us the offensive title?
No.
Can you give us
the
first word in the
It's got two offensive
title?
It's got the original one, and if we can't get that through legal, we've got another one that is, I think, even funnier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and when do you think that will be legal?
I think it's been legal this week, actually.
Could you not have done it before now, so you could at least have told us
I really would
today?
love to talk about it, because for me, it kind of like says what we're looking for. But it's similar to X on the, you know, it's those kind of titles, yeah.
All right, then. And how many, I'm going to go to the app now, where the questions come in. What's the worst reality idea you've ever been pitched?
Oh, God, yes. It's so offensive. It's horrible. I'm not going to say it, actually. It's really... Yeah, shall I?
Yeah, say it.
Yeah, I will say it, actually. I can't believe I was pitched it, actually. It's really unbelievably tasteless. I think, it's going to bring the mood down. I mean, it was really offensive. I did tell them as well. I don't even know if it was a reality show. It's just the most offensive idea I've ever been pitched. It was called Be a Killer Barbie. And what it was, somebody pitched to me women who had been mugged, were given a makeover, then they were given self-defense lessons, and then they were put in a ring with somebody that looked like their mugger.
No, I refuse to believe that's true.
And I got pitched that, and I just thought, something's gone really wrong with my career that somebody thinks that they can pitch that to me. And then I just thought, I'm going to be filmed for some kind of E4 prank show where they're going to think that I'm going to turn around and say yes. That is the worst idea I've ever been pitched.
I literally cannot believe that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Similar to what I asked Lourdes, let's talk about the almost sale of Channel 5 to Viacom.
Yeah.
Would you like to see shows like X on the Beach, for example, being shown on a standard channel?
I think X on the Beach worked brilliantly on Channel 5, but that won't happen because, and this is where I really don't know what I'm talking about, there's this whole Sky carriage deal we're still part of Sky, so that won't happen. I mean, I'm just going to copy what Lourdes says, actually. Can't go into too many details about it. I've had preliminary conversations with Ben and the commissioning team about potential crossover slots, but hopefully next year we'll be able to talk about that more, actually.
Is it something that excites you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I love Channel 5.
And what would be your favourite Channel 5 show then?
Oh, Big Brother. This week's Celebrity Big Brother launch was like the best 2 hours of telly all year. It was incredible. I loved it. I loved it.
So you'd like to work on something like that?
Yeah.
Why doesn't MTV do a version of it?
What, Big Brother?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, you know, the rights are coming up very soon, so, you know,
I don't think
MTV
that's
could
ever going to happen.
acquire
I
it.
don't think Channel 5 will let that go, actually.
No?
Can I just plug another session that I'm doing tomorrow, actually? Sorry, I know it's really rude. But I'm doing a title set. I'm doing the titles debate tomorrow, and I'm going to give £5,000 to the best title. And I would really like people to submit some suitable titles, because the ones I've been getting today are completely unsuitable. They're funny, but I would like somebody to come tomorrow with some great ideas.
Okay, and another question then about Channel 5. Do you think that it's a similar enough channel to be able to work almost simultaneously at 5 and MTV in terms of viewers and what have you? Do you think you have similar viewers?
No.
No?
No, not really. I think for a show like Big Brother, absolutely. But if you look at, you know, no, I wouldn't say so.
And in terms of BBC Three going online, do you see that as a good thing, as a bad thing?
As if I thought it was a brilliant, bold move. I mean, obviously I'm not the production companies, you know, and everyone's worried about how much money they're going to lose, stuff like that. I thought it made total sense. I thought it was really brave. You know, we deal with 1634s all the time. They are going off watching. They're not just watching on TV anymore. My viewing habits totally changed. Rarely do I think I put the telly on a Saturday now. I'm constantly watching on my iPad. So I think it's absolutely the right decision. I thought it was really bold.
Do you think that there are some BBC Three ideas that you
I'm already getting them.
Oh, really?
You can always tell when someone's been to BBC Three, actually, and they've come to the ideas 2 hours afterwards, yeah.
Okay, nice ideas that you would consider doing?
I personally don't want to commission somebody else's shows.
Right.
I think, you know, I think after Georgie in the Valleys, you know, we could be seen as quite a one note. We've got X on the Beach. It's a great format. We want more original ideas. I don't want to commission someone else's show. All right, Steve, we're done. Thank you very much. That wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad. I told you it wasn't.
A huge thank you to Steve. And we have our final commissioner coming up. That's the lovely Heather Jones from A&E Networks. In her role as Vice President of Programming, she's responsible for boosting audience share through original commissions and co-pros for a portfolio that includes, in core territories including UK, Poland, South Africa, Netherlands, Croatia, and Romania. She flies around a lot. But while she's making her way up to the stage, let's take a look at what Lifetime does. That, of course, is Dance Mums UK, but we'll talk about that in just a sec. But first, just to clarify for people here, what are your flagship channels and the regions in which they are broadcast?
The two key flagship channels really are History and Lifetime, so kind of covering male and female, factual, fact-dent and entertainment. We also have CI and we have H2, so they're the four that we have in the UK. Across the 90 countries that sit within our joint venture, History is distributed in all of them, CI in quite a lot of them, and then we're looking at rolling out the other two. There are still two further brands from the US that we're looking at if and where and how we distribute
which
those.
ones?
So, FYI and A&E.
A&E. Okay. And FYI, what sort of channel is FYI?
That's a brand new young lifestyle channel that's only just launched in the US.
Okay, brilliant. Talking about young and lifestyle, we can go back to Dance Mums. Dance Mums with Jennifer Ellison is the actual title. And actually, it's a show that originated in the US, which you remade for a UK market. Why that show in particular?
Well, Dance Moms in the US is by far and away the biggest show that Lifetime has ever had. It's a huge success. It's now into Series 5. Over here, it has a really loyal, big following, very young skewing as well. So it was kind of a phenomenon that when I looked at something that I'd done at MTV was taking those big international kind of, the big US juggernaut shows and kind of making UK or international versions of them. I looked at Lifetime and kind of went, well, that's the one to go for. Yeah. And I think they'd had a stab at casting it before I got my job about a year ago. But the problem with Dance Mums is you've got 3 different sets of casting that you have to get right. You have to get girls that can really, really dance. You have to have a dance teacher who has credibility, who really knows what they're doing, who's also a really big character. Yeah. And then obviously you need the mums to be big characters, so you've got kind of the conflict.
And they were big characters, yeah. I can see from there. I mean, is that a big thing for you? Is that most of what you're looking for from UK producers, is that they remake shows which have been successful on the US version of the channel?
That's one of the things we're looking for, and certainly we did it for History as well with Porn Stars. So Porn Stars Series 2 actually has just wrapped and will go out in September. So we are looking at the franchises that we've got on our channels already that do big numbers for us already. How do you make them greater than they already are? So that's one of the things, but there's definitely lots of other things we're looking for.
Now, you've had homegrown titles that haven't performed quite as well as you'd hoped. The Proposers, Grave Trade, and Ultimate Wills, didn't do as well. So is perhaps remaking a US series possibly safer?
I don't think you can put all your eggs in one basket like that. And I think also we want to give breadth to the channel and bring new things as well. So it's just one of the things that we want to do. I mean, those particular examples, Grave Trade didn't have such a good slot in Series 2. It still did way, way above slot average. It just didn't do as well as Series 1. I still think that whole area of kind of funerals and death is really interesting. Ultimate Wheels was kind of troubled by the fact that the company that were making it, Splash, went into administration partway through production. As you can imagine, the problems that caused were quite significant. And then the Proposers is a really interesting one because obviously it was commissioned before Lifetime launched. And actually what it did for us was it gave us a huge amount of PR for the launch of the channel. The 2 girls were great representatives of what the channel was about. And it kind of summed up the tone of the channel really, really well. But the reality was it was just a bit too soft for us.
Okay. Let's talk about Lifetime, obviously, because as you just mentioned, the relaunch. I mean, how has that been? How is it going? I mean, that's the first time I first found the channel. I watched the client list from start to finish. But that was the first time that I really knew anything about the channel was when it relaunched to Lifetime. So how's it going?
It changed from Bio to Lifetime in November of last year. So we're only halfway through its first year of existence. It's already doubled the size that Bio was, with actually some of the similar shows. Dance Moms, for example, did exist on Bio before it moved across to Lifetime. So it's far exceeding the targets we set for it. I think we'd still want it to get bigger again. So it's in a really, really good, interesting place, actually.
But how do you manage to be distinctive? Because there are so many female veering towards TV channels, like TLC, like Living. ITV is about to do ITVB, for example. How do you retain your individuality?
Well, obviously, we are quite new, so we're sort of carving it and finding our way. But the one thing that Lifetime has, that in the US, they talk about the kind of the triple threat, it's a very kind of American phrase, but they do have very kind of equal emphasis on kind of the original Lifetime movies, which I am astonished perform really, really well for us. I didn't think...
I love a Lifetime
Well, you said you were a big fan.
I adore it.
Yeah. I mean, they spend a lot of money on those movies now. You know, it's not what we remember TV movies were a few years ago. There's a lot of kind of Hollywood A-list talent, both on and off camera. So there's kind of the three prongs are there's the movies, there's the scripted drama. So shows like, you know, Witches of East End and Client List have done hugely for us, and we're certainly looking for more of those. And then obviously it's the reality content. So Dance Moms being the biggest, but there's kind of several others in its wake.
And you mentioned earlier about the fact that CI, in terms of female market, CI is huge amongst the female demographic.
CI has an incredibly loyal following, most of whom are women who watch the channel obsessively from early in the morning till late at night. They have an extraordinary appetite for I think what we do, unlike any of the other kind of crime-based channels, is we're the only ones that commission proper British murder documentaries, and last year we commissioned over 50 hours. In fact, we're the biggest producer of that kind of genre of content. And they just love it. They can't get enough of it. And those shows, so Britain's Darkest Taboos, Town and Country Murder, Crimes That Shook Britain with Jimmy Savile just went out, actually, and, you know, did really, really well for us. They're really popular if you like that kind of thing.
Okay, and it seems...
Personally, not my cup of tea.
But it seems to be quite popular with a lot of women.
Yeah.
But let's go to some questions from the app now. You know, would you like to find a face for Lifetime? Who would be on your dream list?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we're really focused on. So one of the things I'm really keen to do is to start to build some kind of either one-offs or two-parters that are more kind of issue-based and certainly, you know, talk about subjects that you might be able to kind of get some coverage in the press for. And I would like to see a face for Lifetime fronting those. So well, it's interesting. You either kind of go, do you go for a face that everybody knows that sort of feels like they sum up the brand, and that, you know, they feel like they've lived a bit, but they're warm, they're funny, you know. I'm a big fan of using comedians. Possibly it comes from my Comedy Central days. You know, comedians are always clever and bright and clearly come at things from a different angle. So,
how would a face be different on Lifetime to any other channel? What would they need to be distinctive?
Well, I think the humour, the warmth. I think they need to be somebody who's lived a bit as well. You know, I don't want you know, the Charlotte Crosby kind of TLC, perfect for them, but for us not right. So I think it's that a woman probably in her 30s. And the other option is, so we either go established talent, and the other thing we're looking at is, do we literally create our own and kind of, you know, nurture a new face for the channel that really kind of becomes part of our brand.
And how about History Channel? What is it that you're looking for there in terms of producers making content for you?
Well, we're quite spoilt with History, to be honest, because the pipeline that we get from the US is extraordinary. We also have the luxury of picking from other networks within the A&E group. So not only do we have the huge history brands like, you know, American Pickers and Pawn Stars and those kind of shows, but we also have Duck Dynasty and Storage Wars. And so we've got a lot of, in fact, we've got like 7 franchises that average well over 100,000, you know. So we're kind of in a nice place there, really. So what we want to complement that really would be celebrity-led passion projects. So one that was commissioned before my time that aired this year was the Shaun Ryder on UFOs. I smile because it still just makes me laugh, the idea of that. But that's a great example of something where a piece of talent that you wouldn't have seen somewhere else, very much kind of man of the people, who has an obsession but wants to learn more. So
if someone here has an idea like that could work really well on History Channel, obviously from a UK producer, who do they go to? Do they call you?
The best way probably, if it's for History or for H2, is to go to Rachel Jobe, who's the channel editor for those channels, and for CI and Lifetime to go to Kula Anastasi.
And are they looking at just, are you just looking for it to work in a UK market, or are you looking for it to work internationally?
It's interesting. We differ from, or I certainly differ from Hamish's approach in that. And when I came in, I was quite clear that if this money it was coming from the UK budget, my thing is you need to focus on one market, particularly when you're looking at kind of entertainment and that more sort of fact-enty type area. I want a brilliant show that works in the UK. If it also then works as effectively tape sale and I can play it on other territories within our group, brilliant. It may be that, for example, something like Crimes That Shook has worked really well, and actually we're going to make local versions of that, so it becomes a format that we will then
And the rights work
elsewhere.
differently too, don't they?
Well, certainly what I'd like to do is, given that I can't compete budget-wise with a lot of our, direct competitors, so what I'd really like to do is to make sure that, to encourage people to bring me really, really good ideas, is that we basically take a really favourable approach in terms of rights. So bring me a great idea. I'm not fussed about book rights and some of those other bits. I'd rather have a smaller share of a really, really great show than a bigger share of something that's mediocre. So just trying to encourage people to come to us with their ideas, really.
And a question from the app, someone asking about your tariffs.
Okay. So CI, where we are actively looking for kind of new ways to present those kind of murder documentaries, definitely, certainly in terms of stylistically as well. CI is kind of 40 to 50 an hour. History, kind of 50 to 60, but if we're talking about big significant talent, where we might do less episodes, we might spend 100 or so. Lifetime, probably 60 to 70, probably.
Okay, and so we're almost finished, so I'll do one more of these, and then I'll ask you to do a direct plea for exactly what it is that you're looking for across the board. Someone here has said, after Vikings, are you now looking for more dramas?
Oh, God love Vikings. No, I mean, History in the US are kind of doing 2 to 3 a year. They'll do kind of a mini-series and then 2 series a year. We probably wouldn't go beyond that ourselves either. So I think we need them because clearly, I mean, the reach that brings in, we had episodes that were getting across the week almost 1 million viewers, which, given that we're in documentaries at Channel 529, is extraordinary. So we want scripted pieces, but we won't do many of them. We're not going to be looking at, it's not the kind of thing we're looking for at the LA screens. We'll probably be looking at the titles that History commissions in the US first.
All right, you've got 1 minute left. So in terms of what you really, really want someone to come to you with an idea about.
So I think probably for Lifetime and History, it's quite similar really. So it is that celebrity-led passion project. But also the kind of the obdocs and the access pieces. Frisky Business, I really, really liked that we had for Lifetime. That was a really interesting space. History, probably using talent that feels like you want to call them some kind of legend, whether that's from sport, music, comedy, whatever it might be, going on some kind of journey. And for Lifetime, it's about, given that it's for women in their 30s, sex, love, relationships, fertility, those kind of areas. So I think a combination of celebrity-led stuff and then kind of the access obdocs.
Okay, Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there endeth our session. So big thank you to Hamish, Lourdes, Steve, and of course Heather. You, the audience, you've been fabulous. To the festival organisers, and of course the sponsors of this session, Broadcast. Enjoy the rest of your day.